The grand meeting hall of the Galactic Council sparkled under the light of 3 suns. 200 representatives from different worlds sat in rising circles, their voices mixing in worried whispers. At the center of the hall, a hologram showed 3 planets turning to dead rocks, their surfaces covered in moving black dots. Council Leader White raised her 4 arms for silence. Her silver skin reflected the dim light as she spoke. The swarm has destroyed 3 more worlds. We have failed to stop them. Our best weapons do nothing. In the second row, Representative Gray watched the hologram with his crystal-like eyes. Unlike the other council members who looked like they came from gentle worlds, Gray's people evolved on a world of sharp edges and cutting winds. Still, even his kind seemed soft compared to the ones he was thinking about. "We need help," he said, standing up. His voice echoed in the quiet hall. "Not from our usual friends. We need someone stronger, someone who knows how to fight." "And who might that be?" asked Blue, an old council member made of living water. "We have the best warriors in the known galaxy here." Gray took a deep breath. The humans. The hall exploded with noise. Some representatives jumped from their seats. Others changed colors in fear or anger. "The Deathworlders," someone shouted. "Are you mad?" White had to raise all 4 arms again to quiet the room. "Gray, explain yourself. Why would you suggest we contact these creatures?" Gray touched a control on his desk. The hologram changed to show a new planet. "Earth. Look at their world," he said. "Higher gravity than most of us could survive. Temperatures that go from freezing to burning in one day. Storms that could tear apart our ships. Creatures that eat other creatures to live." He paused, letting them take it in. "And the humans, they don't just survive there. They build cities. They make art. They dance. That's exactly why we should stay away from them," Blue argued. "They're dangerous. Did you see what they did to that safety test room last month? Their ambassador bent metal with her bare hands." "Yes," Gray said, "and that's exactly why we need them." He pressed another button, and the hologram showed the swarm again. "These parasites eat everything in their path. Our weapons can't hurt them. Our ships can't catch them. Our bodies are too weak to fight them directly." He looked around the room. "But the humans? They come from a world that tried to kill them every day. Their bodies are built to survive things that would kill us instantly." White leaned forward, her silver face showing interest for the first time. "You've spoken with their ambassador?" "Yes, Ambassador Reed. She told me about Earth's history, about how their people survived ice ages, huge storms, giant animals, and diseases that could have wiped them out. Every time their world tried to kill them, they got stronger." The room was quiet now. Everyone watched as Gray showed more images of Earth, huge waves crashing on shores, mountains spitting fire, storms that could swallow cities. "The swarm is moving toward the core worlds," Gray continued. "When our best weapons hit them, they don't even slow down. We need something different, something the swarm hasn't seen before." He looked at each council member. "We need people who evolved on a world that makes our worst nightmares look like paradise." White stood up slowly. Her silver skin rippled with thought. "How do we know they would help us? Why would they risk their lives for aliens they barely know?" Gray smiled. "Because that's another strange thing about humans. They hear about others in trouble, and they want to help. Ambassador Reed calls it doing the right thing." He shook his head. "I don't fully understand it, but I believe it's real." The council members looked at each other. The hologram kept playing, showing Earth's storms and fires, then switching back to the swarm eating another world. Finally, White spoke. "Send the message. Contact Earth." She looked at the dying worlds in the hologram. "And pray the Deathworlders are as strong as you say they are." Gray sent the message himself. As he watched it speed through space toward Earth, he remembered something Ambassador Reed had told him. "Sometimes the most dangerous thing in the room is exactly what you need to survive." He hoped she was right. They would all find out soon enough. 6 months earlier, the Galactic Council had experienced their first real shock about humans. Gray remembered that day clearly as he waited for Earth's response to their distress call. The landing bay of the Council station had been prepared for every possible safety measure. The air pressure was set to match Earth's. The temperature was carefully controlled. Medical teams stood ready. Everyone expected the human ambassador to need special equipment just to survive. Then Ambassador Reed walked out of her ship wearing nothing but what she called a business suit. "Your air is a bit thin," she had said with a smile. "But it's fine. Reminds me of climbing mountains back home." The alien officials stared in disbelief. The station's atmosphere would have killed most species without protection. Yet this human was comparing it to a hobby. Gray had been chosen to give her a tour because his crystal-like people were among the tougher species in the Council. Even he wore a protective suit outside his home world. "Would you like protective gear?" he had asked carefully. "The station's gravity is set to our standard." Reed had actually laughed. This is like being on the moon. Earth's gravity is twice this." She jumped slightly to prove her point, rising nearly 2 feet off the ground. "See? Fun." The watching aliens had backed away nervously. Here was a being who found their normal environment so weak that she could practically fly. During the tour, Reed had shown even more surprising traits. She drank water that would have dissolved some species' insides. She touched metal railings with bare hands despite the extreme cold of the station's structure. When a door malfunctioned and slammed shut, she had simply pushed it open with her hands. "Sorry about that," she had said, not realizing she had just bent metal that was meant to withstand space battles. But what really changed Gray's view of humans was the garden incident. The station kept a garden of the galaxy's most dangerous plants behind strong force fields. During the tour, a power failure had caused one of the deadly vines to break free. While everyone else ran, Reed had stepped forward. The vine, known for its poisonous thorns, had wrapped around her arm. "Interesting," she had said, studying it. "Reminds me of the poison ivy back home, but bigger." Then she had carefully unwrapped it and helped the scientists secure it again, despite its toxins that should have killed her instantly. Later, in private, Gray had asked her about Earth. Reed showed him pictures that seemed impossible. Oceans with waves taller than buildings. Mountains covered in frozen water. Deserts hot enough to cook food. Animals that could tear metal apart. "And you live there? Willingly?" he had asked. Reed smiled. "We don't just live there. We love it. Every morning, millions of humans climb those mountains for fun. We swim in those oceans. We camp in those deserts. Earth tried its best to kill us, so we learned to be stronger." Now, 6 months later, Gray watched the council members argue about their decision to call humans for help. He remembered Reed's last words from that first day. "The galaxy's a big place," she had said. "Sooner or later, you might need someone who evolved on a world that doesn't play nice. When that day comes, call us. Humans are pretty good at dealing with impossible things." The emergency alert sounded. All eyes turned to the main screen. A message from Earth was coming in. "This is Commander Stone of the United Defense Force," a new human voice announced. "We received your distress call. We're coming to help. And we're bringing some special equipment we use for pest control back home." Gray smiled as he watched the council members react to the casual way the human called the deadly swarm a pest. Maybe that was exactly what they needed. People who were so used to fighting for survival that even space monsters didn't scare them. He looked at the frozen image of Commander Stone on the screen. The human wore a simple uniform and had a slight smile, looking more like someone going for a walk than heading to fight humanity's first space battle. The age of the Deathworlders was about to begin. Commander Stone's ship looked wrong to alien eyes. While council ships were smooth and elegant, the human vessel was blocky and covered in what looked like armor plates. It landed in the council station's bay with a heavy thud that made several aliens jump. The ship's door opened with a hiss of steam, another strange choice to the watching council members. 5 humans walked out, led by Commander Stone. They wore dark blue uniforms that looked surprisingly simple compared to the environmental suits the aliens expected. "Well," Stone said, looking around with interest, "this is nicer than our briefings suggested. Good airflow." He took a deep breath. "Bit thin, but we've brought our own oxygen mix just in case." Gray stepped forward to greet them. "Commander, thank you for coming so quickly. The Council is eager to discuss strategy." "Show us the enemy first," Stone interrupted, but not unkindly. "In my experience, talking about fighting and actually fighting are very different things." The Council's main viewing room displayed the latest images of the swarm. Massive clouds of dark shapes moved through space, leaving dead worlds behind them. The aliens waited for signs of fear from the humans. Instead, they saw something more puzzling: interest. "Reminds me of fire ants," one of Stone's team members said, leaning closer to the screen. "Remember that invasion in Texas last year?" "Mixed with some honeybees," another added. "Look at that movement pattern." Stone turned to the Council members. "We'll need to test something. Can you show us a captured specimen?" The aliens led them to a high-security lab. Inside a strong energy field, a single parasite creature floated. It was about the size of a human hand, with sharp edges and a dark, shifting surface. Most aliens couldn't look at it directly without feeling sick. Stone walked right up to the field. "Lower the barrier, please." "That would be extremely dangerous," White protested. "These creatures can survive." "Most things, yes," Stone finished for her. "But sometimes the old ways work best." He pulled something from his pocket that made the aliens step back in alarm. It looked like a weapon, but unlike anything they had seen. "This," Stone explained, "is what we on Earth call a shotgun. Traditional design, just updated for space use. Sometimes the simple answers are the best ones." Before anyone could stop him, he signaled his team. One of them lowered the barrier. The parasite shot forward instantly, aiming for Stone's head. The commander didn't even flinch. He raised the shotgun and fired. The sound made every alien in the room cover their ears. The parasite exploded into small pieces, its natural defenses useless against the spread of simple metal pellets moving at high speed. "Just as I thought," Stone said calmly, while the aliens stared in shock. "Your energy weapons are too clean. These things evolved to resist energy attacks, but they've never faced good old-fashioned physical impact." He turned to his team. "Get the rest of the equipment from the ship. All of it. Especially the kinetic weapons." The council members watched in a mixture of horror and amazement as the humans brought in what looked like primitive weapons alongside advanced gear. Stone explained each item, though most aliens couldn't understand why anyone would use such basic tools. "Sometimes," Stone told them, "being advanced means you forget the simple solutions. On Earth, we learned to fight with whatever worked, not just what looked impressive." He laid out his plan. The humans would lead small teams to engage the swarm directly. They would use their natural resistance to hostile environments and their primitive weapons to hit the swarm where it was weakest. "But that's suicide," Blue protested. "Going that close to the swarm." Stone smiled. "On Earth, we have a saying: the best way to deal with a storm is to go through it. We're used to doing the impossible. It's kind of our thing." As the humans prepared for battle, Gray watched them check their equipment with calm efficiency. He remembered Ambassador Reed's words about humans being good at dealing with impossible things. Looking at Stone's confident team, he finally understood what she meant. To humans, impossible just meant they hadn't done it yet. The edge of the swarm looked like a dark storm cloud in space. 3 human ships moved toward it, while the Council's fleet watched from a safe distance. Commander Stone stood at the front of his ship, watching the swarm grow larger on the view screen. "Remember," he said to his team, "this is just like handling the Brazilian killer bee invasion last year, just bigger and in space." The first wave of parasites noticed them. Thousands of dark shapes broke away from the main swarm and rushed toward the human ships. On the Council's vessels, aliens held their breath, expecting the humans to retreat like everyone else had. Instead, Stone gave an order that shocked them all. Open the gun ports. Let's show them how Earth deals with angry insects. The sides of the human ships opened, revealing rows of what looked like simple metal tubes to the aliens. As the swarm got closer, these tubes started firing. The space between the ships and the swarm filled with clouds of small metal particles moving at incredible speeds. The effect was immediate. The parasites, used to facing energy weapons, had no defense against thousands of tiny metal pieces tearing through them. Hundreds fell apart in seconds. Just as I thought, Stone said, watching the screen. They evolved to handle energy attacks, but never learned to deal with good old-fashioned buckshot. But the swarm was learning. The remaining parasites changed their attack pattern, trying to get close enough to use their neural invasion abilities, their strongest weapon against most species. "Sir," one of Stone's crew called out, "they're trying to get into our heads." Stone actually laughed. "How's that working out for them?" "Getting nothing but headaches, sir," another crew member replied with a grin. Turns out Earth's wildlife prepared us pretty well for this. The aliens watching couldn't believe what they were seeing. The neural attacks that had devastated their strongest warriors seemed to barely affect the humans. Later, they would learn that living on a planet full of dangerous creatures had given humans natural mental defenses that most species never developed. "Now," Stone ordered, "show them what happens when you corner a species that evolved as prey and predator." The human ships moved forward, not away from the swarm, but into it. Their weapons fired continuously, creating walls of metal fragments that shredded the parasites. When some parasites managed to land on the ship's hulls, they found another surprise. The armor was covered in tiny sharp points, like the spines of an Earth sea urchin. "The thing about Earth creatures," Stone explained to the watching council through the comlink, "is that we learned from all of them. Defense, offense, survival. It's all built into us now." The battle continued for hours. The humans didn't just fight. They studied the swarm's behavior. They noticed patterns that reminded them of Earth's insects. They saw how the parasites communicated, how they moved together, how they reacted to threats. "Look at that movement," Stone pointed out. "Just like army ants when they're protecting their queen." Which means, he didn't finish his sentence. Instead, he ordered his ships to release something new into space. Small devices that released waves of pressure changes, like underwater shock waves. The parasites scattered in confusion. The pressure waves disrupted their ability to communicate, just like they disrupted ant colonies on Earth. "Found their weakness," Stone announced. "They can't handle rapid pressure changes. Probably never evolved to deal with them in space." By the time the battle ended, the edge of the swarm had been pushed back. The council ships moved forward to see the damage. Where thousands of parasites had been, now there was only empty space and scattered debris. On the main council ship, Gray watched the human vessels regroup. Their simple-looking ships had dents and scratches, but they had survived. More than survived, they had won. "Fascinating creatures," White said beside him. "They turned their planet's deadliness into strength." Gray nodded, and this was just the first battle. He looked at the distant swarm. "They haven't even shown us everything they can do yet." Stone's voice came over the comm. "Ready for round 2. Because now we know what we're dealing with, and on Earth, we have a saying. The first punch is just to test the waters." The laboratory on the human ship looked nothing like the clean, quiet labs the council used. Tools were scattered across tables, dead parasites lay dissected on metal trays, and the walls were covered in hand-drawn diagrams. Commander Stone stood in the middle of it all, looking at a live parasite floating in a sealed container. "Look at how it moves," he said, tapping the container. "Exactly like a wasp looking for a way into a beehive." Dr. Wells, the team's biologist, nodded while taking notes. She had spent 3 days studying the captured parasites, comparing them to Earth's creatures. Unlike the council scientists who stayed far from their specimens, She worked close to them, protected only by thick gloves. The whole swarm behaves like a super colony, she explained to Gray, who watched nervously from the doorway. Like ants or bees, but in space. Each one is part of a bigger mind. We discovered that years ago, Gray said. That's why our weapons didn't work. You can't scare a creature that doesn't think for itself. Stone smiled. But that's exactly why we'll win. On Earth, we've been fighting super colonies for centuries. Ants, bees, termites, they all think the same way. He walked to a large screen showing the swarm's movement patterns. See these formations. Classic hive behavior. They're protecting something in the center, something important. The queen, Dr. Wells added. There's always a queen. Every successful hive species on Earth has one. It's the only thing that makes sense. Gray moved closer, interested despite his fear of the specimens. How can you be sure? Dr. Wells pointed to different images on the screen. Look at how they move. When we attack the edges, those parasites fight to the death. But when we get too close to certain areas, she played a recording. They retreat. They protect. Just like bees protecting their queen. Stone picked up what looked like an old paper book, something that shocked Gray, as most species had stopped using physical books thousands of years ago. The title read, Earth's Most Dangerous Insects and How to Fight Them. Sometimes old knowledge is the best knowledge, Stone said, seeing Gray's surprise. These parasites aren't that different from our bullet ants or killer bees. They're just bigger and in space. Dr. Wells brought up a new image showing the inside of a dead parasite. Their biology is strange to us, but the basic rules are the same. They have to communicate. They have to eat. They have to protect their leader. And that, Stone added, means they have weaknesses. Everything that lives has weaknesses. Earth taught us that. Even the strongest creature can be beaten if you understand how it thinks. He turned to a map of the swarm's territory. We didn't just fight them these past 3 days. We tested them. Every attack was an experiment. We now know they hate pressure changes. They can't handle physical impacts, and they protect their center at all costs. Dr. Wells nodded excitedly, just like when we dealt with the Great Fire Ant invasion back home. Once you understand the enemy, you can beat it. But approaching their center would be suicide. Gray protested. The concentration of parasites there would be massive, yes, Stone agreed. But we're not going to fight them all. We're going to use what Earth's exterminators have known for centuries. You don't need to kill every ant to destroy the colony. You just need to reach the queen. He pressed a button, showing a new weapon design. It looked simple, almost crude to Gray's eyes. Think of it as a big bug bomb, Stone explained. But instead of poison, it creates waves of pressure changes that will disrupt their whole network. While they're confused, we go for the center. Dr. Wells added, the best part is, they won't expect it. They're used to enemies who run away, not ones who run toward the danger. Gray looked at the humans working in the lab, handling deadly specimens with casual ease. He remembered what Ambassador Reed had said about her species. Humans don't just survive danger. We study it, understand it, and then we overcome it. Looking at the detailed plans and careful studies around him, he finally understood what she meant. These Deathworlders weren't just strong. They were smart about their strength. The real question was, would it be enough to save the galaxy? The human ships looked tiny against the massive dark cloud of the swarm. 5 ships against millions of parasites. On the Council's main vessel, aliens watched in silence as Commander Stone's team started their mission. This is madness, Blue whispered. They'll never reach the center alive. Gray watched the screens without speaking. The humans had refused to let any alien ships join their attack. You're not built for this kind of fight, Stone had told them. Sometimes being tough is about more than having good weapons. Now he understood why. The human ships flew straight into the swarm, not around it. Their weapons fired constantly, creating paths through the parasites like tunnels through a storm. just like digging through an ant nest. Stone's voice came over the comm. His voice was calm, as if he was discussing the weather. Keep moving. Don't stop for anything. The parasites attacked in waves. Millions of them crashed against the human ships. But Stone's team had prepared for this. Their ships released clouds of tiny metal balls that spun in magnetic fields around them. Any parasite that got too close was torn apart. Earth technology, Dr. Wells explained to the watching council, based on how turtles and porcupines protect themselves. Simple, but effective. The deeper they went, the harder the swarm fought. The parasites tried their neural attacks again, but the humans had adapted. They wore new helmets based on the natural defenses of Earth's most resistant creatures. Getting some pressure in my head, one crew member reported, but nothing worse than a hangover. Stone's ship led the way, pushing deeper into the swarm. Their sensors, modified based on how Earth's bats hunt insects, tracked the Queen's location. The closer they got, the more desperate the parasites became. "Look at them scatter," Stone said. "Just like wasps when you get near their queen. We're on the right track." Suddenly, their ships hit something different, a wall of parasites so thick it looked solid. The normal weapons couldn't break through. "They're packed together like defensive ants," Dr. Wells observed, "creating a living shield." "Then we used the big guns," Stone ordered. "Everyone, synchronize your pressure bombs, just like we practiced." Each ship launched a special device. When they exploded, they didn't create fire or energy. Instead, they made waves of changing pressure that rippled through space. The parasites couldn't maintain their formation. The wall broke apart. "There," Stone shouted. "Look at that structure." In the gap, they saw something alien yet familiar. A massive organic structure floated in space, surrounded by swirling parasites. It looked like a giant version of an Earth beehive, but made of dark, shifting materials. "The Queen's chamber," Dr. Wells confirmed, "built just like a hive." But reaching it wouldn't be easy. The remaining parasites fought harder than ever. They crashed into the human ships with suicide attacks. Alarms blared as hull damage increased. "We didn't come this far to fail now," Stone said. He opened a channel to all ships. "Remember your training. Remember Earth. Everything that tried to kill us back home made us stronger. Today, we use that strength." The human ships formed a V formation, like birds flying through a storm. Their remaining weapons fired in patterns copied from how Earth's animals hunt in packs. Each ship protected the others, just like wolves protecting their pack. Through the chaos of battle, through clouds of dying parasites, through waves of neural attacks that would have killed any other species, they fought their way forward. Finally, Stone's ship reached the structure. The other ships formed a defensive circle around him, holding back the swarm with their last weapons. "Time to introduce these space bugs to some old Earth wisdom," Stone said, preparing their final weapon. "When you want to remove a hive, you don't need to kill every bee. You just need to reach the queen." Gray watched from the council ship, holding his breath along with every other alien. The humans had reached their target, but the hardest part was still to come. The question wasn't just whether they would survive. It was whether the galaxy would survive if they failed. Commander Stone's ship hovered next to the massive hive structure. Inside, his team prepared for the final phase of their mission. They put on their spacesuits, special designs based on Earth's most resilient creatures. "Remember," Stone told his team as they checked their gear, "we're exterminators now, just like dealing with a nasty bee nest back home. Only bigger." Dr. Wells looked at her scanner. "The Queen's chamber is giving off the same signals as Ant Queens on Earth. We'll find her by following the strongest neural patterns." The team pushed off from their ship. 5 humans in reinforced suits, flying through space toward the dark structure. Around them, the battle continued. Their ships fought desperately to keep the swarm away. But everyone knew they couldn't hold forever. "We have 10 minutes, Stone said as they reached the hive's surface. "After that, our ships will run out of ammo." They found an opening, something like a tunnel into the structure. Inside, it looked like a giant version of an insect nest. Tunnels ran in all directions, and the walls pulsed with strange light. The team moved fast, using their suits' magnetic grips to run along the walls. The parasites inside attacked them, but bounced off their armor. The suits were designed based on Earth's armadillos and rhinoceros beetles, creatures that evolved perfect natural armor. "The signal's getting stronger," Dr. Wells called out. "We're close." They reached a massive chamber. There, floating in the center, they saw the Queen. She was enormous, bigger than their ship. Her dark body rippled with energy, and thousands of parasites moved around her like worker bees. The Queen noticed them. She sent out a neural blast so powerful it made their suits' sensors scream. But the humans didn't fall. On Earth, they had evolved fighting creatures that used every kind of attack: poison, electricity, mind-affecting chemicals. Their brains had natural shields that no other species had developed. "Now," Stone ordered. His team spread out around the chamber, each placing a device on the walls. The devices looked simple, just metal boxes with buttons. The Queen sent her warriors to attack. Parasites swarmed toward the humans from every direction. But the team had trained for this. They moved like Earth's predators. Quick, efficient, unstoppable. Devices set, Stone's team reported one by one. The Queen seemed to realize the danger. She tried to move, to escape, but she was too big, too slow. Just like insect queens on Earth, she was trapped by her own size. "This is for every world you destroyed," Stone said, pressing the trigger. The devices activated. They didn't explode. Instead, they created waves of rapidly changing pressure, like the shock waves that kill Earth's deep-sea creatures. The waves hit the Queen from all sides. The effect was instant. The Queen's neural control broke. Without her guidance, the parasites fell into chaos. The entire hive structure began to shake. "Back to the ship," Stone ordered. "Move like your life depends on it, because it does." They ran, jumped, and flew through the collapsing tunnels. Behind them, the Queen's death screams sent waves of energy that would have killed any other species. But humans had evolved on a world where everything tried to kill them. They were ready for this. They reached their ships just as the hive structure began to break apart. Around them, the swarm was falling apart. Without the Queen's control, the parasites lost their coordination. They scattered into space, no longer a threat to anyone. On the Council ships, the aliens watched in amazement. What their most advanced weapons couldn't do, 5 humans had accomplished with simple tools and determination. Later, at the victory celebration, Gray asked Stone how they had known their plan would work. Stone smiled. "We didn't, but on Earth, we learned that doing the impossible just means trying something no one else was willing to try." White, the council leader, stepped forward. "The galaxy owes you a debt we can never repay." "Then repay it by remembering this," Stone said. "Sometimes the most dangerous species are the ones you need the most." Being a Deathworlder taught us to be strong, but it also taught us to protect others who can't protect themselves. As the celebration continued, news spread across the galaxy. The swarm was defeated. But more importantly, everyone learned a new truth. Sometimes you need a species that evolved on a death world to save life itself. The age of humanity had truly begun.